This conference will now be recorded.
Okay. Again, thank you, everyone. We will call the meeting to order, 6:17 p.m. So I was thinking, because we have a couple of new people, maybe we can just quickly go around the room, do introductions, and then I think outside you had talked about maybe allowing the young lady here who wanted to speak, maybe we could put her to the top of the agenda.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
Just doing something that we yet stop with.
My name is Chris Stroller. I'm the long-range planner here at the township, so I'm one of the staff members.
Mark Baptist, resident for like 35 years, 34 years. Yeah. Love South Whitehall Township, and I'm here to make sure we continue keeping a great township.
I'm Lauren House. I'm the Allentown EAC's college intern.
Hi, Cindy Rickard. I am South Whitehall resident.
Marie North, I think I've lived in the township now for being 37 years, and I was on the Green Advisory Council for this group, and now a member of the EAC. I second what Mark said, to keep this township green, beautiful, sustainable.
Sarah Seipel. I've lived in this township for 21 years, and I was on the EAC as well. EAC and EAC as well. And thank you. And I agree. I think that this live and being here helps us make it continue to be that way.
Derek Pinkham. I've been with the town almost 5 years. Actually, next week is my 5-year anniversary at the town.
All right.
I've been doing environmental work for most of my life, so that's kind of why I joined here. Kind of utilize my knowledge, help others.
Hi, I'm Emily Long. I worked at Parkland Nurseries for a while, which is in South Whitehall Township, and now I work for the Parks and Rec Department here in South Whitehall. I have a landscaping and horticulture desk, so I want to get involved with that and add that knowledge to the township as well.
Hi everybody, I'm Frank Petroselli, township resident for 22 years now, and like several of the other people, was in the Green Advisory Council and now an EAC member. So,
Tom Petrucci, I've been the township manager here for almost 2 years in September, so very good. And I also have extensive knowledge with EACs in my previous job, township manager in Plainfield Township. So they had a very robust EAC. So.
And you don't have anyone online. Floor is yours.
And I'm here today to talk about a project we're working on that we'd love to get you guys involved if possible. So essentially what we want to create is some kind of interactive online platform for EACs within the Lehigh Valley to further collaboration with one another. So a place where you can go and talk about projects or initiatives that you've been working on that have been successful and share them with other EACs who are in your area. And a place where you can have all of like those contacts and resources kind of at your fingertips. You know, it's sometimes hard to know who to email about something, to get help with something you're working on. And if we have them all kind of in one collaborative area, it would make communication a lot more streamlined. It would also be really great for engaging in kind of larger scale projects. It's maybe something one EAC can't really tackle alone, but they can post out there and say, hey, we're really interested in working on this. Is anybody else interested? Do you have contacts or resources that we could utilize? And just to be more helpful to each other, I think there's so many great initiatives and projects that each EAC is working on individually, and there's definitely power in sharing those with each other. But we want to kind of get input from all the EACs in the area on what kind of platform they think would be most helpful, rather than just, oh, we think this is helpful, we want to hear from everybody. So we're thinking of hosting a kind of brainstorming session to talk about this at Northampton Community College. Probably the last 2 weeks of August is the time frame that we're thinking. So if anyone would want to join, I would love to get anyone's information about it, so that I can keep you in the loop on this meeting if you'd like to attend, to share any of your info with us. If anyone has any questions, I'd love to answer.
Do they have any ideas of the topics they want to share or, promote?
Not exactly specific topics, it's more just like whatever someone wants to put out there, who's in the EAC network can just put it out there. Or if there's a specific problem an EAC is dealing with, like, say like at Allentown, we're having some problems with our wastewater management, we could just put that out there, hey, does anybody have any contacts, resources, any advice on this? And then EACs who have maybe dealt with the same issues before, or have any ideas on it, are able to contribute.
Who would administer the site? Would it be EAC?
So,
Would it be responsible
we're
for that?
actually working on maybe collaborating with We Conserve PA on this. So, you know, they have tons of information on their site, are very like well knowledge about all things EACs. So, we're thinking of kind of collaborating with them, but creating more of a space within that for just the Lehigh Valley area. They do have like a discussion forum, but it's not very active, and we think if we can maybe kind of piggyback on them and create a space for Lehigh Valley EACs to speak, it could be really helpful. So we're in communication with them right now about that.
But you still need a site administrator, I would assume, to keep this from just becoming just garbage.
Right. I know We Conserve PA has an administrator that they use, so I'm not sure if it would be the same one or if we would have our own. That's kind of probably something we would work out within the meeting or the brainstorming session there forward.
So We Conserve PA would be involved in that August brainstorming session to see
Yes.
like what their capacity could be.
Right. Yes, we were, so we'll probably talk about this more at the brainstorming session, but you know, some members of the Allentown EAC are thinking maybe we would have like our own separate, some type of platform. Like, I don't know if you've heard of like Nextdoor or like something like that, having it be separate. But we think that if we can collaborate with them, it might be a little bit better because they have a lot of knowledge about this and have done a lot of work to create that platform.
Yeah, I mean, for anyone that hasn't kind of worked with We Conserve PA in this, in the past, they used to have kind of a dedicated staff person, or it used to be run out of maybe Pennsylvania Audubon or someone, to help with this sort of facilitation. And I know that they have had like work groups in the past, so maybe it could be something like that, like outside of their
Right.
forum, where they actually have like some file sharing.
Yes.
So I think that's a really strong partner.
Yeah.
If it's something that our group would want to consider.
Yeah, so if anyone is interested in being at that meeting to give any feedback, I'd love to get anyone's email. I can also leave mine with you if you have any questions in the meantime.
If you leave it with me, I can distribute it to everyone.
Oh, perfect. Okay, yes. You can,
Yeah, if you want to-
I'll write that down. Thank you very much.
Project reminds me of what the Lehigh Valley Sustainability Network have been trying to do for years, but on a much bigger scale with companies, businesses, organizations that were interested in sustainability and how they were going to promote their sustainability. It never really got off the ground. I was on that board for a while. But the idea was similar to what you're talking about. And this is an interesting idea. So, yeah, just a general comment.
Yeah.
I think it could definitely be a way to help this Lehigh Valley EAC network forum kind of get a bit more organized and a bit more focused on doing things collaboratively. Because I think, Sarah, you've been to some of the meetings, I've been to some of the meetings, and it's kind of, everybody just talks about what they're working on as opposed to, getting to the point of, here's some things we can do together. So I think it would definitely, something like this could be very helpful.
Yeah, definitely. That's what we're hoping. Yeah, I put on there, my personal is the top one, and then you can also put A-Town EAC as for the EAC email. Yeah.
And I'll distribute that. And so if people are interested in attending, just reach out to you to let you know.
Yeah,
and
that's
expect them.
cool. Yeah.
Okay.
I'll probably be sending out like a when to meet or something like that to try to get a date and time that works for the most people. I'll probably try to do that within the next coming week or so. I still have a couple of EAC meetings I'm trying to get to before then.
I'd be happy to volunteer to attend.
Yeah, I think if there's something that We Can Serve can talk about, if they could model how they've had other working groups that, like, I think to your point, Frank, like, yeah, if the Lehigh Valley EAC, it seems like it's just a lot of emails and then they try to do one project, but I know for
We've
other,
had a couple events where, like especially with the planning commission where they brought in speakers, but as far as actual projects, I mean, I'm not aware that anything's kind of come out of that. It's where you can really say it's a collaborative project.
Not in the last 2 years.
Not
I
that-
can speak for that.
Well, that's all it's been.
Oh,
It's not
has
been
it?
active that long,
Okay.
so, yeah.
So then not in the last 2
Yes.
years.
Well, thank you guys so much for letting me talk. I really appreciate it. I know you guys are so busy, so I really appreciate it. Thank you guys. Have a good rest of your evening.
moving on to agenda item number 2, acceptance of minutes. The minutes, I'm sorry, they're in your packet. I don't know if I had a chance to send them out before. They're on page 2. As I said, there's a lot going on. So we'll give it a couple of minutes, if anyone has any questions or concerns about the minutes.
Am I right in thinking that in the email you sent that we were gonna have a printout of some of the landscape plan?
I have,
Just, to add that to your pile,
yeah, I have some of them. I'll be sending out digitally as well. I'll be honest, I have to assemble some of them. They take a pretty long time to print and assemble. So, if people want to wait around at the end, I can get you a physical copy. Yeah, I apologize.
I wasn't looking at that.
Is there a digital copy available? Or?
I haven't sent it out yet.
I know we haven't sent it out, but I mean, it is complete in digital form.
It's 98% complete.
I'm happy to just look at a digital copy.
That's kind of what I wanted to see too, if anyone wants the physical, but I fully intend on sending out the digital copy this week. And I can print a physical copy for anyone that wants it for notes. But I'll be honest, we want to make sure that we have time to go through and do some proofreading before we send it out. And I made some adjustments to the maps today, and we want to kind of give it another look before we send it out, just so we're not getting a lot of comments back and misspellings or, questions on something here and there. But we can run through it. I do have it digitally that we can run through. And like I said, I have 2 copies assembled, if anyone does want to look at it in person. But we can jump to that. Any questions on minutes? Okay. Was that related to the minutes?
Well, I
or-
just read it on the minutes.
Yes.
Maybe it's an EAC, we should adopt the practice of looking at it digitally as opposed to.
Yeah, I was gonna say, I mean, that should be like rule number 1, I
Yeah.
think, Let's go paperless.
Environmental.
I make a motion to accept the minutes.
Thank you. Yes, so item 3, landscapes plan is 98% there. We spoke with the Board of Commissioners last week about the adoption process. I'll pull up kind of the timeline here, and it's in your packet. And so my goal is to get this from 98% to 100% tomorrow and send this out. I think what we'll do is host it on the website, and then I will send out a link to that. We would like to get the board review of this in the next couple of weeks, and then we would see where we are from there as far as maker comments, and then we're looking at having kind of a public review pushing people to the website, and then I'll have a copy here in the township building that people can come in and make comments on. We're looking to have this go, if everything goes well, go back here in August. And we'd be looking from this board to the planning commission in September. Again, looking for a recommendation for adoption so that it'd be adopted at the Board of Commissioners meeting on September 18th. So we can run, I think, maybe kind of plan, and then we can kind of talk about this. We have about an hour. And the only other thing that I had really on the agenda was how this ties in with the work plan. So I think we can kind of take our time with it. The only other thing is maybe next month, how would, do it later, how would you all feel about electing officers? I think we're ready for that now that everybody's kind of, all the, initially we didn't have so.
You get to be
So,
president.
President, vice president.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah, so right now I kind of run through the agenda because we don't really have anyone elected, but usually the president of the EAC would run through the agenda. I probably work with them the week ahead of time to kind of talk through agenda items. And then really that's kind of the extent of it. And then in the absence of the chair, it's usually vice chair. We don't really have like a secretarial role only because we record, I think.
So can I ask a really stupid question?
Sure.
It's not really stupid, but, like, what does this group do? Like, do they initiate decisions? Like, what does this group do? Or do they support and promote, like,
It's a
land?
great question. That is
Oh, all
what
right,
we
it's not a
are
stupid
figuring
question.
out.
Our mission statement.
Mhm.
Oh, you have a mission statement, that's. Well.
Go. We like theirs. We didn't reinvent the wheel.
I mean, ultimately, we're an advisory, right? So we don't make decisions, that we provide input for the commissioners, so that, and hopefully give them some guidance on the decisions they want to make, right? So,
Yeah, specifically focusing around open space and culture in the township and making sure natural areas are treated and whether we have the correct regulations in place, things of that nature.
and sustainability, right? Is the other
Yes.
things in a way sustainable for future generations.
Yeah, Chris, I talked to you. You remember me? Oh, you did? Oh,
Yeah, of course.
Thank you.
Yeah, so what we're going through now is the South Whitehall Landscapes Plan, which is kind of our preservation plan we've been working on. And this will have a lot of action items that will be carried out by this board. In addition to that, for the past months, we've been working on kind of an annual work plan that would give a little bit more specification to what actions this board would take. Things like, are they doing, conducting outreach or, doing events? What actions out of this plan that they would recommend to the board to do and then carry out? And so we're kind of still in the infancy. So it's not a stupid question. It's a great question that we hope that we can kind of pretty good answer to.
Chris, excuse me.
No, you can have.
Can we move it, I mean,
Yeah.
because we could kind of move it around,
So how does the shade and what was it?
Landscape and shade tree.
No, it's Stacy.
Yes, the landscape and shade tree, they, as authored by the code, they look at trees that are planted with things like, we just reviewed several land development plans that have trees in the right of way, so they make comments on that. We also have a permit process that we review with them, that if someone needs to do work to a tree in public space, they need a permit for that. And this board, we've actually been looking, the one who met here earlier, we've been looking a lot at updating our guide for shade trees for residents and homeowners to understand, good planting techniques, good trimming techniques, and yeah. Yeah, we are very fortunate that they are dedicating their attention.
The tree, not bullshit.
Yeah, I know. It's so true. So the shade tree people, Chris, not to keep belabor this, but they're gonna have input into this as well.
Yes,
Okay.
yeah.
Before it goes
Are they
to the board, I mean, you're gathering input from shade tree, you're gathering input from us, okay.
And planning commission.
Okay.
We have our planning commission as well.
Oh, that.
So it's all natives, right?
Our approved species list. Yes, we're talking about that though, actually. Tim and Stacy have talked about, there could be some advantages to certain species in a certain use of that species that might be something that helps with climate resiliency, that it doesn't have like invasive tendencies. But mhm,
Right, available is the big thing.
yeah.
People get them.
No, it's just, do you guys work with Edge of the Woods or anything like that? Are they cooperating? Like, would they work with you?
Yeah, they would, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, the shade tree is typically, the individual homeowner, they can choose whatever nursery, and that's one of the things that we've been trying to work on, like, what do nurseries have so that when someone asks, hey, it's a great list of trees that I can plant and ones that I can't plant, but I can't find any of the ones that I can, so
Yeah.
we're trying to. Okay. Any other shade tree questions?
Sorry.
No, it's okay. I want to be able to kind of dig into the plan a little bit. So, for those, yeah,
Sorry, but you put some notes in here about an open space tax. Is that part of the plan now, or is that something?
it's a recommendation in the plan.
Okay.
Yeah, so the recommendations, there's one for developing an open space preservation program, and then the second piece of that would be financing mechanism. So the open space tax is what we looked at during this plan. That would be pretty appropriate for township of this size for the type of preservation program we're looking at. But it's not tied in. The reason it's in that memo is because one of the things we wanted to make the Board of Commissioners aware of is we talked about the potential tax last year as we were going through this plan as one of the like early implementation items. We wanted to give them an idea of a timeline, an adoption timeline, and associate that adoption timeline with if it's of the interest to pursue that tax, there's a lot of time constraints on it. So we have to work backwards if we're looking at the spring ballot for that. And just to kind of let them know that we need to keep this moving if we want to target the spring so that it doesn't go through an adoption period in December and then we start talking about it and we're kind of behind the eight ball.
So this would be something that would be subject to a referendum?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, and you have to have it on the ballot 13 Tuesdays before the election.
Is it possible this group could maybe help in
Absolutely.
publicizing the advantages of it or something, promoting it in some way?
Yes.
Okay.
So that's kind of what I want to get to in the action plan and talk through all that. So that's the other piece that I didn't want to hand everything out because I still have pieces, and you'll see in the back of the action plan, there's still some pieces missing, or there might be, dummy text in there. But I want to kind of make sure that we can adequately talk about what we're recommending in that action plan and try to get a feel for some of the things that this board would have involvement in. And if I need to add some more context to that, I can certainly do it in the plan. So the landscapes plan, for those that, you've all been pretty involved in this over the past year, but basically we kicked this off last summer. And it's came out of our comprehensive plan, and it's a preservation plan for agricultural resources, natural resources, historic resources, and open space. The comprehensive plan called for looking into preservation of all those things and maybe individual plans, and we combined it all in the idea that in South Whitehall, we see these not as just individual resource protection opportunities, but more how do we preserve the larger swaths of a landscape? Because a lot of these resources overlay in certain areas, a lot of them are connected to each other, and we also want to develop strategies that complement the preservation of these and they don't create conflicts. So the plan is laid out like that. The beginning is really just the introduction. And then we talked about our community engagement process again last summer. We kind of went through the idea of the answering certain questions. So the first kind of kickoff was answering like why landscape preservation and where are we talking about. And we had some great kind of feedback through some of the exercises there. Then we had a series of meetings last August that talked about the specifics of the three major resources, ag, natural, and historic. Because for me, and working in the preservation world for a long time, if you talk about agricultural preservation, we want to answer the question, what does that mean? Does that mean you like a tractor in the morning on the road? Does that mean you like the smell of manure? Or does that mean you like big open vistas? Or you like produce nearby, fresh produce that you can go? So we really wanted to dig into that for all of these resources so we can kind of put some specifics to this plan. And I think it's really helped us understand what resources are a priority and what are actually attainable for some of the strategies regarding preservation. And then we wrapped it all up with the how, which is kind of the different mechanisms and kind of our preservation toolbox, and the when, which is kind of the process to adopt this plan, invigorate the EAC and get and like the open space tax. We have a lot of historic early implementation projects here that we started to kick off. So kind of that process to how do we put this plan into action. Yeah, I think some of the public engagement was really neat with, we had our agricultural professionals panel last summer, which we had 4 people who work in the ag field in different kind of walks of life, and we were able to ask questions. We're actually recreating this panel, I think, with the local chapter of the American Planning Association. So we're excited to kind of see like this build upon something, and it's cool. Agricultural resources we learned a lot about, and some of the things we talked about is the different levels of agriculture, and how much we have in the township. And I mean, right here you can see the darker green. These are prime ag soils. So we have great farmland here. These are all farms over 10 acres. We don't have a lot of protected farmland though. So that's certainly a challenge. Some of the other challenges through all of the resource and stakeholder engagement and subject matter expert conversations we've had, land is the #1 challenge that we've heard from the agricultural community. So trying to address that in different ways, of whether it's protecting land or what creative solutions the town can take to acquire land or to work with property owners to increase that access to land. And that all ties in with cost, cost for a new farmer to purchase land. Like, we really have maybe 1 or 2 farmers in this township on all of the land that we have. So as we go through and we started to talk about, some of our opportunities, there are a lot of opportunities for younger farmers to come into this area. Location is huge. We have a lot of land. We have water. We have, connections to our streams. We have a township managed water system, and we have the market. And that's something that we heard from some of the folks who were saying we're always in this transitioning township. We have a huge population near us, but we still have some rural areas in the northern tier. So we have good farmland that is very close for people to access regularly. So we want to try to take advantage of that.
Do we ever think of doing something like a Rodale Institute in this area? Are there any like universities that you think would hook up with that, like Penn State in particular,
We
that's.
talked to Penn State, we talked to Rodale. They were some of the people that were really, really helpful with this. One of the things that when we look at the action plan, one of the interesting recommendations we never really would have thought about if it wasn't talking to folks like Rodale or the Seed Farm in Lehigh County is the idea of the township taking a little bit more on from the like ownership or management of land, protecting that land, but then working with other agencies to actually get farmers or people interested in agriculture out and and there's always been education. Jandal,
Good
and
luck.
yeah, but the two biggest farmers in, Jandal as a property owner, but Jandal as a farmer as well, with, different levels of agriculture, whether it's, turkeys or just the other crop fields. And then the Newhart family, like Newhart corn farms just about everything else. Yeah, Joel Newhart was actually one of our speakers at the ag professionals panel, and it was interesting. He even talked about how it's not just the land, it's the access to the land. So it gets harder and harder as the development occurs. And if we're splitting, a 15-acre parcel, it's not really worth it then for him to have to move his equipment from one area to another area to another area. So we're trying to be cognizant of where we can keep intact farmland and make sure that it's actually accessible to those farmers.
Hey, driving on the roads. We're giving a negative, they weren't happy about it being on the roads with this tractor.
Exactly. We keep
Yeah.
building, so it's like, where's the trade-off?
Who owns that? It's a little, very small farm by Lehigh County soccer fields. And there's the Cedar Brook Nursing Home.
I think it's all county.
Yeah, but is that the little farm?
Yeah, the one that's on the road
Yeah.
and it's surrounded by the soccer fields. Yeah, that's owned by the county, that part of there. Yeah, part of the park. Scale was a really interesting thing too that has helped influence what we look at as far as recommendations for more of the like for zoning and things like that. So we obviously talk about large scale with, our like the Newharts and everything like that. Medium scale is kind of a newer area where we're looking at things like farmettes or combining this with like a residential aspect where we know we have residential interest, we have residential pressure, we have people that want to move to the Parkland School District. Where can we combine with creative zoning and encourage, protection of agriculture that also has a residential component that can pay for that? Because it's not we don't have farmers knocking on the township's door saying, hey, I want to go buy farms. We have people, I want to live in this area, or developers, I want to develop in this area. And then obviously small scale. And this was, someone, we had our photo survey. So people are submitting photos of things that they enjoyed about the landscapes in, in their hometown. And this is just someone's backyard garden. So also considering that for the residents, how do we, and then you and I kind of talked a little bit about this, like how do we promote more natural understanding in your yard and agricultural understanding, and there's things we can do as a township, either promoting a resource or just make it easier. So the goals for our agricultural side, number one, protect existing farmland. So we talked throughout this plan about later on in the plan about the mechanisms to protect, and this is where that direct protection through easements and acquisitions, zoning, as I mentioned, in a variety of ways, and certain incentives, things that we can do to encourage farming in areas that we have good farming. And some of that can be through zoning and, flexibility through zoning for someone to keep a farm or to, keep an area of a farm connected. Encourage a variety of agricultural opportunities. That goes back to the whole scale concept of we want to see lots of different things, because the large 100-acre farms there, as much as we can try to protect those, we won't be able to protect all of those. So how do we encourage different scales? And it's tremendous through some of the resources like Rodale that are out there to, you can do a lot with a small plot of land. And we want to try to think of ways to do that. And that's part of what we heard from the community feedback of an important aspect of agriculture that we haven't really thought about or paid as much attention to as a municipality before. And all of that connecting with the agricultural community. It was interesting. So we talk about like resources. Certainly as a township, we're not the experts in this, but there's a lot of people out there that are. So how can we promote those kind of resources to people? But also learning from farmers and some of the people that we talked to, just the challenges and the ignorance of not understanding if someone wanted to come to the township and they wanted to farm, not understanding what the process would be or what the zoning regulations would be or what they can and can't do. Something as simple as, organic, someone who wants to have a certified organic farm, but they may not understand, the practices around that farm that could negatively impact their certification process, even, just roadside weed management and things like that. So,
Chris,
Yeah.
just a quick comment, I don't want to belabor it, but I know Sarah and I attended that meeting where the farmers were there. And the one thing that I think we need to realize, and Joel Newhart mentioned it, and I was shocked at the number of acres he farms. However, he travels all over to farm that acreage. It was a staggering number. I just cannot believe where he travels and takes equipment all over so that he can have a viable farming practice, it was amazing to me. So I think we all need to be more aware of that and also supportive. I mean, I attended those meetings where everyone said, we want land preservation, we want farms. Okay, well then you better want the farmer too, because he's gotta work it, he's gotta move from one spot to the next, and you gotta understand what you're asking for.
And he doesn't own the land.
Yeah, he doesn't own a good bit.
That was
Yeah.
a
Does not own it.
point of that.
Yeah.
So having an awareness of what the farmers go through.
Yeah, I know what they go through.
It's amazing.
Or-
He was great. He was very informative.
So I just wanted to kind of like look at the flip side of that. So if we have an influx, let's say, of large farmers that come in. So the herbicides and pesticides that they spray on the fields and then the water runoff of that into the water system. I'm sure you already have thought of that and have some kind of answer for me, but what is the offset of that,
I don't have an answer.
Probably
we
should
have
have it
that
trust
question.
organic.
I think,
Can we?
what's that?
Can we trust organic? Because you're
Not
right
with
about
big
that.
farmers, not with, because to grow corn, they put that down, nothing else will grow with the corn, right? They have that GMO product of
Mhm.
Roundup that will kill
Oh
everything
my
growing the
God,
corn,
you agree.
right? So,
It's.
right, so, living downhill from a farm, how does that affect? That's like, but if we're encouraging more farms to come in, how do we offset all those chemicals that we?
Can we change our focus on preserving more of the woodlands than the farms?
That's another piece of the plan.
Focus more on that
farmers
than
are
the
out.
farms, because
I think it's having a bit of everything.
I mean,
I think that's what we're talking about. I think we want a bit of everything that we can keep what we have, right, and preserve the farm and the woodland and the open space. Am I right? Am I wrong or?
No, you're absolutely right. And that was kind of, to the direct question of like, what resources or what aspects of the resources are we talking about? Is it the farm, the producing farm, or is it the look of a farm, the culture associated?
Oh, what's
with it?
important
To the community,
Yeah,
yeah, and
right.
that's what we were trying to ask, because that's been one of the, the Lehigh County Agricultural Preservation Program, incredible program. There's one protected farm in the township through that program. I don't know if it's a great program to expand in this community because they're very specific to crop production and to the size of the farm and all of that. And from what I heard through some of our community engagement, it is more about the aesthetic of it. So that could be, a farm field that is, somewhat fallow. It could be, maybe even buffering, agricultural buffering of something else behind it. That seemed to be more important to the people of this community on a larger scale than maybe the specifics of what's on that farm. Whereas if you go to another, like much more rural community, it might be different. Or if you go to like, an urban community, it might be, oh no, we need fresh produce that we can, access because we don't have it.
Yeah, what's interesting to Cindy's comment and what you said about the seed farm, there are so many young people there that if they're gonna go out and start a farm and they're looking for land to do that, many of them are looking to be organic.
Yeah.
Many of them are, and because we have such small spaces, that they could potentially farm, that could help us in that regard.
Well, yeah, I mean, you can charge 5 times as much for your produce because it's organic. I mean, that's the only way you can probably make it profitable on a small scale.
Manage those fields too.
Yeah.
If you have hundreds of acres, it's really.
You have to worry about everything around you.
Right.
I can probably get a speaker on that if you want me to. I know someone who ran it for you. And he knows regulations and everything. I can ask him if he'd be interested in attending.
Yeah, leave it up to the board if they're interested. I think, so my question at this point regarding the kind of organic piece of it, because I don't have a good answer as to what we can do as a township. I've tried to look at, there's a lot that we talked about in this plan, a lot of great things we could pursue, but I tried to whittle it down to what can Whitehall, this particular municipality, do as per our actions. The thing that I'm not aware of is how involved we can get in the organic sense of things. It's like the conversation we had earlier with the native species on our approved species list for street trees. We can't, I mean, some municipalities do have here's what you can plant in the township, but we have tree species that can be in the right of way. And if it's not that, it won't be approved. The organic practices might be something, if that's a topic of interest to this board that we look at. Do you think it's large enough to consider highlighting in this plan as maybe a direct action, or maybe that's just something we add to our work plan?
I wouldn't make it like a hard requirement because it's really significantly difficult and financially difficult to actually get the actual organic certification.
Yeah.
So a lot of people are doing organic stuff, but they don't have the actual organic certification because it's so expensive and it's so hard to actually qualify for.
I mean, I think we should be open to people who want to do that, but ultimately it's going to be up to the farmer to decide.
Exactly,
right?
yeah, so we
I don't
can't.
think we should
Yeah,
mandate
that's what I was
anything.
thinking too. When things are so up to private, but you guys, it sounds like, and I'm on the newbie, so I hope you don't mind me interjecting things, but I'm thinking about this and I'm thinking the farms are gonna kind of do what they want to do. Like, we don't have control if they're gonna sell. We don't have control if they're gonna go organic. We don't have control if they're gonna use chemicals. And really even talking to them like on a large scale to say, hey, can you go organic? They're not gonna be able to do it. So do you think our focus would be better off talking about the individual landowners? People's yards make a big difference. And I think that's where we could get a better buck for our efforts, is really focusing on what we can promote and what we can change. People think that they have to have this beautiful, perfect lawn, and it's so sad to see it. It's killing everything. It's killing hummingbird. I see it. My neighbor is one of them. I'm so trying to talk to him, but getting the focus on, hey, you know what? It's the benefits of, having something on your yard and how to get past the maintenance part of it all the time. And the thing about it takes too much time and too much water. And maybe, you know what I mean? We have so much development around here that if we kind of did that, I'm wondering if that would be a better focus.
It was interesting you say that, Cindy. I was at the Parks and Recreational meeting. You weren't there, I don't think, at the time. And someone stood up and said that he's embarrassed that the parks have weeds, that the grass is not perfectly manicured, that it was, what?
Spraying the ground.
Right, no, which is great. And I was saying actually the opposite, the grass should be tall for the animals, it should be, for the bees, particularly in the spring. Then a lot of Europe has gone that way where the parks aren't beautiful. in a sense, but for nature and environment, because it's for them too.
We get calls when it's like a little bit extra. It's like
Yeah.
we get calls, why isn't it mowed?
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
Cedar Beach is bad because they're actually, I told the girl, I said, they're actually have invasives growing all over the place where I know Chuckster Park is trying to pull out invasives. And so I think even the parks might be a good way to go in starting to do meadows and forests, like less mowing, save money. You know, you still have some areas, maybe start going with sedge grasses or different types of grasses other than our regular grasses that have tons of weeds in and be free. But maybe like,
But when we do that, we
See
have
what
to have,
you want to
you have to have notes on the park. Signs saying, this is an environmental, we know the grass is tall, this is for the environment, for nature, because otherwise people, yeah. Because otherwise people.
A lot of resources on it called
Yeah.
register your yard to be part of.
that's what I want, that's
But
my.
that's like you're saying, it is a small yard, but it does make a difference if each person does in their yard.
Well, again, I think the role of this group is to provide the township residents with information. And what are the trade-offs, right? Why would you want to do this? What advantages to the environment are gained by doing this, right? I mean, we
I
can.
think you have to focus more on what is the advantage to them, because people are all about how it affects them. You know, like seriously, how it affects them and focus on trying to. If you say, oh, it's the, like, I don't care. I don't like leaves, I don't like this, I don't like this, I don't like that.
Yeah.
That we really wanted to talk about outreach, how we can put things
I
together.
mean, even within the plan, you're right. I mean, I think there's a real important component of, why do people care about open space, right? I mean, I think a group like this can be helpful in
Making that connection.
in communicating the reasons for this. What are the trade-offs? What are we gaining by having more open space, right?
Yeah.
So there's a reason why people should care about this, right?
Yeah, that's and like, I'm thinking almost like not a comparison, but something to kind of point to say like, hey, here's the 5 basic things that, when we talk about preservation of these resources, like, here's what we could have one way or the other.
More farms, there's going to be more. I mean, I don't think we should try to just sugarcoat everything, and I think we need to be honest with residents about, because everything is trade-offs in this realm, right? So I think we have to be, willing to say to people, well, if you want more of this, you might have more of this that you have to deal with, right? And just put it out there for people so they can make their own decisions as to whether it's important enough for them or not.
Then we could start where it does matter, like we have control of parks. Do you know where Bucks County is gorgeous? They have so much plants and it's just gorgeous and people flock there. Do you know what? They love living there. It's one of the richer communities, but it's so green. And like we could create parks that are that beautiful and,
That's in this
because we
plan.
have power to do that and start somewhere and then kind of people like, oh, this is so beautiful and look at this native plant, how pretty it looks with this, and like start getting into how pretty they look, because otherwise people like me, when I started off with native plants, I didn't know anything and didn't know what to do, and if you didn't know how to combine them, and then people see them and go, oh, that's really beautiful.
They have a lot more people that are all kind of talking about it and know about it.
Right.
And they're, as a kind of prioritizing. I get how people do it.
But I think what's so exciting is that's what you guys are like trying to do.
Yeah, that's there's a direct action.
And we're your little
in this plan. The one thing I wanted to mention from our last meeting, I think Sarah, you just brought it up, but like we talked about that kind of messaging. I added to the action plan, like home messaging, something like that, to call out that specifically to everything you guys are talking about, like coming up with like those, here's something you can do at your house and tackling or attacking on the advantages to it and the trade-offs to it. I think, beyond the landscapes plan, that I think that's a really important thing that the EAC could do. So I'm gonna kind of keep moving on. There's a lot to get through. So we talked about ag, natural resources. So again, with the answering the what natural resources, there's a lot of things we could talk about in this plan, but we wanted to kind of keep it in the buckets of woodlands, topography, hydrology, and habitat as really broad categories and developing strategies to those. I think there's all kinds of, future planning efforts we can look into when it comes to sustainability. We've talked about updating the township stormwater management plan. We've talked about updating our sewage facilities planning. So there's other areas we can go related to, natural and environmental issues, but I think these are the kind of the major categories that we could associate some of the complementary strategies around when we're talking about things like ordinances and land protection and preservation. It was that's kind of where we went. So yeah, woodlands. We talk about street trees, topography, slopes and things like that.
Wow, you covered a lot. This is awesome.
They work hard.
It's a lot of planning efforts in one. It's kind of like 4 plans in one. Streams and hydrology. We kind of quickly mentioned stormwater management, talk about green infrastructure. One of the things we talk about is classifying our streams as far as, there's different, if you just look at like a stream map, I mean, there's what could be just a kind of a ditch in the ground compared to like the Jordan Creek compared to a different creek. So kind of, I see this also as like a mapping exercise and just starting to look at, what our hydrologic system is. We talk about riparian areas and the importance there. What's that?
Spring, it's like artesian.
Yeah, I mean.
Like, we're literally perking
Yeah.
on the ground, like.
So that would be
Is that
good.
any-
Yeah, like if we can identify that and then think of what kind of protections we can associate with that, whether it is like a land protection type of thing, like an easement type of thing. Because we mentioned the importance of groundwater, and, headwater streams.
I actually think the water utility engineer has done some of that already.
Okay.
So we could, tap into that
Yeah.
information.
They've already mapped out the natural spring heads in the area?
I don't want to say that definitively, but I know they've done a lot of work in certain areas on it. So it's maybe something that we can utilize.
As a water supplier, and that's where kind of
Yeah.
this is scratching the surface of that, and so that might be something that even the EAC recommends, hey, we do a more in-depth engineering type of plan, and
It might give us an overview of where to hone in on.
I feel like where we, I know.
Mhm.
We need help.
Yeah.
Don't fill it in.
Yeah.
Don't fill it in.
Don't we, it's real quick, waiting for some kind of a report from, and I know the name, I can't remember the full name, and they're out in Lancaster. And
Land studies.
Land studies, and
Yes.
looking at the edges of the
Yeah.
Jordan.
Yeah.
And trying to think about, are we gonna do riparian there and this type of thing?
So we're actually gonna have some preliminary information on that at the next board commissioners meeting. Yeah, so we'll, a very high level at the first, to kind of give an overview, and then, that'll help focus in, we were actually just talking about it today, focus in the final deliverable product to the board and to the community. Yeah.
I wondered where that was, riparian buffers to protect the edges of the stream because they're all eroded and.
Yeah, the concept of the plan was to look at the park as it exists today, the Jordan Creek with the dam, with the bridge, and then try to see what options, if any, are available.
If you plant like rain gardens there, does that help the erosion, that kind of stuff, or do you need the better?
Not along the.
Rain gardens help with volume and quality, so it helps treat it, it helps. But if you're talking about a significant amount of volume, like you see in Covered Bridge Park, it's like
this is Covered Bridge Park.
Yeah, it becomes very problematic because that's where the water, that's where the stream wants to flow and overflow events and rain gardens.
Beach about that.
Yeah, that's an amazing picture too.
Yeah, when was that? When was that?
It was last year, I think we sent a drone.
Yeah.
up with
Did
police. Yeah.
But it's in a floodplain too, so.
I never really go to Covered Bridge.
Oh.
So much talk, about it and.
So that's what it was designed for, I believe, yeah. Put the park in that floodplain.
Yeah,
Instead of-
instead of houses, it could happen.
Similar to what we were talking about with like the connecting our larger tracts of agriculture, we wanted to emphasize, the connected habitats and how we need to focus on, not having isolated habitat. Otherwise it doesn't do the job that it could be doing. So this is where some of our like green light planning and, here's some of our more sensitive habitats and just areas to focus on as far as resources. So the goals for natural resource preservation, again, protect priority natural resource lands. This is one that you'll see later on in the action plan that kind of identifying where those priorities are, sort of as a very spatial person, like overlaying a lot of those resources and what are the sensitive areas, what are the priorities, you're talking about like, hey, yeah, like we need to consider groundwater supply and all of that, and where is that in relation to areas that are threatened, where is that in relation to other natural resources that could be there to help guide where we can direct some of our preservation, whether through regulation or through acquisition. Encourage better stewardship of natural resources is exactly what you guys were all talking about. And there's a lot of ways to do that through education, through this board, through things that we can do on our own properties, through parks properties and so forth. Regulate natural resource protection. This is where we start to talk about, additional ordinances or looking at some of our existing ordinances, how we can regulate in some ways through zoning and, put in appropriate parameters through zoning to encourage better preservation. And then connecting with local and regional partners. This one's very important for natural resources because they know no municipal boundaries. Our stream comes from somewhere, it goes somewhere. This is where connecting with other EACs, connecting with our other municipalities, and other kind of like regional partners to look at how we can work together on this. And this is where like watershed planning and things like that.
Chris, so
Yeah.
just to have to go back to page 67. The map, that.
Yeah.
I don't need a real detailed answer, but there's numbers on this map. What do they,
Yeah,
that's gonna be corrected,
Yeah,
so we know what we're looking at. Okay,
Yes, this is one of the
that's-
old maps that I had in that today I was looking through.
Okay.
I want a new map.
Okay, very good.
These are the two natural heritage area locations. Number 1 and number 2 are identified areas of very sensitive and important ecological habitats.
Okay.
And then the lighter green is what in that surrounding area could support that same type of sensitivity, or the same types of plant and animal species that are identified in numbers 1 and 2. So it just kind of gives us like especially at number 1, that's, we should be focusing on that because there's a ton of information that says this is sensitive. Any impacts to it can completely adjust what's there.
And I'll have a talk with you, but we have rare vegetation on our property, but we have been told not to advertise that, and not to
Yeah.
talk about it.
That's why these are so big
We have
too, like, yeah.
to, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so when the state does these, sensitive, studies and the surveys for them, they keep them pretty large so that you don't identify, oh, here's a bog turtle habitat or something.
Or a rare plant.
Exactly.
That's the thing, yeah.
Yeah.
Why, people will steal it or something?
People, yeah, if there's money in it.
Yeah.
So,
Jeez.
Historic resources, while it might seem a little outside of the other resources we talked about, we identified the really important thing of having in this plan is if we are preserving a historic resource, it really doesn't mean as much if the surrounding area isn't preserved as well. It's about the context. It's not just about the individual resource. So this is where we talk about land preservation for historic resources and kind of combining things. There's a lot of information in there about historic resources. This probably won't involve the EAC as much, but this is where we're kind of talking through identifying what our historic preservation strategies could be. We're talking about creating a municipal board that's associated with kind of the township's regulatory side of it, and then also encouraging a non-municipal board, historical society or something like that, that can help promote and the preservation of resources and storytelling and that sort of thing. So yeah, the goals here: protect our historic resources. That's the direct protection, whether it's part of a land acquisition or it's through our regulation. Encourage historic resource preservation. This is more of the there's not much you can do regulatory wise, but having the right incentives and having the right programs, you can kind of encourage people to do the right thing, and by making it attractive to someone and helping with the bottom line, it helps with the preservation of that resource and the long-term sustainability of that resource too. And then connecting is kind of the storytelling, and there's a lot in the intangible piece of preservation. So all of those resources really come together into open space, and open space is probably the most critical piece of this plan. And there's a lot of different components to it. So one of the things that we really wanted to focus on is open space as a term is often thrown out there. What does it mean? So we want to sort of define it, and I think that helps with this board, with our planning commission, with our planning department, with developers, with residents, with everyone. So we've developed what we call this open space transect. A transect shows kind of a hierarchical transition from less developed to more developed in the planning world. So we applied that concept to open space. So starting over here on the left, you have what we're calling our wild areas, which is really, it's kind of left as is, forested areas or, large meadows that there's not really there's no management associated with it. And these are kind of less, you're seeing less people as far as where they're located and access. And then transitioning into kind of our managed natural areas, which is what I think a lot of you were talking about, and how do we appropriately design for natural resources on our public spaces and so forth. We have our agricultural open spaces, our large farms over 10 acres or so. Our farmettes are kind of, as I mentioned in the beginning, utilizing that like residential component to have agriculture tied in with residential development, and instead of just throwing in houses everywhere, we can kind of have some agriculture there. Market farm is an interesting kind of new idea we're looking at. In the biggest piece here is the commercial aspect. So market farm would be where you're a little bit closer to people, or you would maybe be able to have people come visit. So if you had like a flower farm or something like that, or if you had a you pick produce type of thing on a small scale. And it's important for us to think about this with having the appropriate zoning, what can be allowed in zoning. Then all of our recreation open spaces, passive parks, which is more your walking paths and picnicking and so forth. Active park, which is your sports fields and playgrounds and everything. And then plazas and pocket parks. We have a couple of these, but this is also kind of separated into its own category. I think it would help when we're reviewing land developments to sort of get an understanding of, is it an intentional pocket park within a development? What does that mean from an open space perspective? as opposed to, something outside of the development. And then our utility areas are also open space, but they serve a different function. They are serving utilities and trying to look at those as a category to encourage maybe some naturalization in there. Also, if we get a land development in, sometimes it'll say open space, 20 acres of open space. Well, 15 of that is just their stormwater management area that they're required to put in. So it kind of separates that out when we look at it from a dedication standpoint. So that's what this whole next section is about, providing the context for those.
Chris, do we know how much of the township is classified as open space? I mean, do we have those numbers?
Now, that's what I want to do with this board. I'll prepare sort of a map and like a base map for us to look at, and we would, through the lens of these classifications, maybe we could try to make determinations as to, under existing conditions, what would we classify this open space as? Then we have those numbers, and that helps us figure out if we want a target goal of, more managed natural areas versus active parks, or more, large farms or something like that.
Because I think if you have categorization of what we have now, and, a goal of what does the ideal look like, then that gives you, I think, more direction in what you want to work toward. And
And
it will
often,
also inform the amount of funding required.
yeah,
From a
absolutely.
space perspective, you don't want to have too much funding or too little. You want to have just the right amount to actually have a measurable outcome.
Yeah, because we would do it with both the public property that we have and the private property that's out there. And that gives us an understanding of opportunity for, we might have a lot of farmland that we know might not stay farmland unless it's protected, or we might have areas that, in some of our wild areas, we might look at it with some of the other resources and say like, oh, that's, steep slopes or something like that, it's not going to be developed as much, and figure out a prioritization.
to me, it seems like the whole goal here is balance, right? You have to have some development, you have to have some commerce, right? But what's the right balance, right? And I think, how do you convince people that that is the right balance, right? And because, more development means more taxes, more revenue, but it also means more traffic and more, congestion and
Bigger school.
bigger schools, yeah, more school taxes, yeah. So I think that's part of what this group can do, is really kind of help educate people. Is that, again, I talked about trade-offs earlier, that, everything comes with a cost and a benefit, and so, helping people understand what those trade-offs are, and why we don't want the whole township to be nothing but high-density housing, right? But then we don't want it to be all farmland either, right? So I think helping to kind of figure out what that right balance looks like, and then.
And I think for one of the reasons we wanted to really put emphasis on having this kind of clear definition, or at least instead of just throwing out there, especially if you're talking to residents about maybe like the open space tax or something like that. And they say, well, what is open space? I like this, but I don't like that. And you can kind of show people, like, here's what we're talking about. We have X amount of, farms already. We have X amount of parks. We have X amount of, wild areas. And we're trying to get more wild areas protected. We're trying to protect these, large farms that we know are viable to continue, that scale of farming, as we talked about earlier. So this is really something I want to try to have everybody be comfortable with when we're talking about these, and some of it we might need to work out of, do we need to add a little bit more detail to it? I'd like to kind of point to some of these in some of our regulatory documents, like the subdivision land development ordinance, because then it's right from the beginning. It puts everybody on the same page.
Because honestly, I mean, an open space tax, I think, helps sell, right? And
Yeah.
I think that without some justification for why we're doing it, and what we get by doing it, right? And so I think if you just, without that context, I think it's gonna be something, right, more tax, right?
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
why do I want to do that, right? So,
Are we applicable to apply for grants? Plus, my employer, if we can come up with a nonprofit, and it has a tax ID, my employer matches 3 times whatever I donate. So
So-
maybe we could come up with some kinds
Yeah,
of
there's grant programs in the state where you can
help with that if you guys need.
the acquisition, where you can use the open space funds to match it, like exactly the way you're described.
That's usually,
And that way I can get, people, maybe, I mean, there's employers that match contributions a lot of times. You get people to do stuff like that, then we wouldn't have to tax
I'm sorry.
as much. I'm sorry, what?
I thought,
No, I'm sorry, go for it.
what employer is that does 3 times?
Oh, he's wonderful. He's from Watson out of Fairfax in Canada. I work for a subsidiary that's called Riverstone, and they match 3 times whatever. So if I
They'll match
donate
like a
1,000, they donate another 3,000.
Yeah.
They're wonderful, my employers.
yeah, you see a lot more
So
larger.
we're starting to get like
Yeah.
them. You'd be amazed how many are willing
Air products.
to. Do they do that too? 2 for 1. Yeah, that's normally what they do. But hey, it's better than nothing. You can get some people on board and less tax, and once people start seeing changes, that kind of motivates them, and once they see it, then they get a little bit more on board with it, like.
But not to, like, just interject on that, I 100% agree with you. I think that the outreach that we all want to do, we want to be able to get to these people, but maybe just if I could say, if we could add like an agenda line item to specifically talk about how are we going to
And
have fun, but actually get our voice in front of these people.
Mhm.
Because I feel like what maybe the township and what, we've been doing is not really getting in front of people. So I don't need to talk more about it now to waste time, but when we can dedicate some time, what are we actually gonna do? We have the information we want to talk about. How are we gonna get it in front of these people?
Yeah, like a campaign. And that's a very common thing when municipalities are looking at this, and there's often a separate group that is, not associated with the municipality, that's its own political action committee that does have a little bit of funding, that does that gets the word out, because there's 21,000 residents here, 21,000, taxpayers in this township affected by that. How do you reach them? How do you get the right
Right.
message across? And what is that right message? So,
Gosh, you'd be surprised. You go to those open concerts that they have, give everybody a sunflower and start talking to them. They'll love it.
yeah,
They'll
that's
love it.
something
Little
that this
things
board
like,
could
yeah,
absolutely
like,
do.
and I think that's a
We
great.
utilized that for them in the past.
Not to deviate from this, but if we could just put it on the line item for future talks, is, because we want to start getting out there, getting this information out to people. And we have information that we can already start doing that, but how can we do that?
And it's like
we're
saying,
taking-
you only get 2.
Right.
But so we all have to support each other. Don't get
Well,
discouraged.
it's not just getting in front of people, we have to create the content that we're gonna communicate. Get in front of them, right? So
Estate planning.
they all-
We need advance, then we can get ready for it, do you know what I mean? And there was that, we did one at high school. And they gave us a great table right by the front door. We got a lot of, I don't know what we gave out, we got rain barrels. People wanted rain.
They were
barrels.
interested in rain barrels, they were,
Yeah.
yeah. That was
I think we should, give out rain barrels.
Oh, they're tough though. They'll get moldy. Just stick a container outside. It'll rain again. It's like funny.
What I think is interesting, Chris, I'm looking at this. And I'm looking at all of the effort that has gone into this. The huge amount of great information. And how do we, the township, I've heard too much, and I will admit, past meetings about how the township is not doing enough in any of these areas. Oh, my word.
But really,
So how
are.
are you guys getting the word out? Seriously, as the town, are
Well, I
you?
think the first step is to get this plan adopted.
Yeah.
And that's our guide in order to give us our marching orders on what we can and cannot get the word out on, right?
Okay.
Because, so we need to have that guiding document. And then that would be the first step. And then the next step would be to formulate, as Chris put it, like a campaign, which we have to be careful because we can't really lobby.
Yeah, and sometimes it usually is separate from
Right.
the municipality.
Separate from the municipality, but yeah, the talking points, and this has been done by other municipalities in the area, like multiple times now. We're probably one of the last ones to undertake this process, so we can use that template as a guide for us as well. But yeah, I think the first step is getting through this plan so that we have our legitimacy in terms of getting the message out, right? Like the governing body has approved the plan, it's gone through a process, and then we know this is what the township wants to do. Yeah.
Because so much of what you're talking about here, that's what I heard about at those meetings.
Mhm.
That's what people wanted. You know, I'm talking.
Yeah, that's.
The number,
I mean, that's great to hear. That's kind of what we're looking for.
This is what we want, and it became very loud and verbal.
Yeah.
And so you're giving it to them.
Yeah.
Here it is, you're giving it to them.
And the important thing is it doesn't all happen at once.
Right.
But by having it documented, by having it adopted, by having it become kind of our guiding light for this board, for the township staff working on different aspects of this, it gives us something, when we have opportunity or when we're looking at high priority projects, when we find areas that we can say, oh, let's do this. Yes, it's pull out the landscapes plan. Yeah, people talked about that. They wanted that. Here's an opportunity to do that. So this is not, something that will get done in a year. This is a long-term project, but we're going to try to, tackle what we can.
I think another thing too, sorry. Like how that gets back to your voice, like how I think we should focus, you already know people who want us to do something. Like you mentioned about preservation, or maybe when I was talking to you about how they wanted to preserve this area and they wanted it wild or something, was I talking about?
Polar Ridge.
So
Polar Ridge.
that's a place to start, like we need to practice, and we don't have to worry about trying to convince people who haven't gotten on board yet. Like kind of focus, okay, where do we have the green light, and start there and then build from there, because we're novice. We're not really too much going in there, how to go about doing it. So kind of practice where we know we're accepted, and then kind of start branching out from there. And that would even save us maybe some time and money, because we're not up against the odds. We're being accepted. We don't have to worry about how are we going to get our voice out there, because they already like and are buying into what we're doing. So
Yeah.
like focus where we
For
where
the
we're
low hanging
accepted,
fruit.
kind of where we're accepted, right?
Yeah. Do you want to say something?
I was just going to say that, once this plan's adopted, I would assume that commissioners are going to campaign on this plan, right? That's another way to get it out.
Yeah.
Right?
I wasn't even thinking about that.
Like the newsletters and everything, they'll be like,
It'll be a
posting all our good work.
multi-pronged approach. There's limitations to what we can do as a municipality. We can certainly provide education, and we can certainly, advocate for implementing our policy that will be this plan. On top of that, there will be the direct political kind of campaigning.
The last few election cycles, it's been pretty clear that smart development is what people are concerned about in this township, right?
Yeah, and then this, is this is a good kind of campaign booklet for that too.
Amazing.
I want to kind of go through, this is just when we talk about how do we actually protect open space. We identified a couple of different strategies, and these are all things that we can start to dig into with the EAC and how this all comes in. And then so there's three main goals for open space. Plan for open space, which is all the stuff that we've talked about, identifying what open space we have, what our goals could be, where they are, where priority areas are, the resources that kind of can be combined to give us priority areas for open space, protect that open space through, direct protection with the township or, the regulation, and then manage open space. That goes back to the naturalization side of it. How are we managing it with the rest of the goals in this plan of the open space that we do have? And then we have, 30 some actions. So this action plan is what will be, so I'm gonna go all the way down to the bottom. That gives us a summary here, and we can kind of just look at this quickly. So these are the just about 30 direct actions, all the things that we want to do with this plan. The EAC will hopefully have involvement in a lot of these, if not all of these, some more, involvement than others. This is where we're trying to, make sure we have the right information in these actions that give you guys the guidance to understand what we're talking about. And then once this plan gets adopted and we start to tackle these are the things that we've been kind of dovetailing into this this group's direct action plan for the year and where we go with these next steps. So there's a lot in there. We have them kind of different columns: planning and programs, policy and regulations, outreach and education. Outreach and education, there's a ton in there for the EAC. Planning and programs, we talk about the first one we've talked about numerous times tonight. That's the inventory and the mapping. A3 and A4, that's the actually developing our preservation program and then financing that preservation program, developing that preservation program, including, how would we actually do this? How would we carry out, direct acquisitions of properties or easements? What would that process be? And then A8 is what we talked about a lot. Investigate opportunities to naturalize open spaces. This is where, looking at some of our parks and looking at some of the spaces that we have and identifying, and maybe that becomes a recommendation of this board to say, hey, we've gone through our inventory, we've identified the open spaces we have the public open spaces owned by the township, and we see opportunities here, here, and here in underutilized open space that's just mowed grass, and we would recommend trying to do something there. And then we take that through with the Public Works Department, and we see what we can and can't do there. The policy and regulation side of things, a lot of this is more staff oriented, but there's definitely, I see some involvement, especially like B3 or no, B2, natural resource preservation ordinances. This is where we talk about, I could see even this board doing some research into, what are good ordinances for, woodlands preservation. What are some of the things that we would consider there if we were to adopt something like this and develop something like this, or riparian preservation, steep slopes, that sort of thing. What are other, ordinances that we could be considering? And the B8 is the Saldo update subdivision land development ordinance. That's where taking our open space classifications, updating Saldo so that it's very clear in there what open space means, and when a land development comes in, how open space dedication is looked at, and what is this board's direct involvement in land development review. I know we kind of mentioned that last time, not having kind of the clear guidance on that. So that's something that we're talking about here. And we have some ideas around that. Any questions?
I'd be so excited to get this going.
I am, yeah. It's nice to see it come together. It's one of these things where you want to try to get all the right pieces so that you can go forward, but you also can't get everything perfect, so you gotta keep moving forward.
I think you're getting pretty good.
So, what I will do is continue to, make some of the edits that I talked about tomorrow and work on the specifics of the action plan. This is where, each one of these has its own page. And in that page, here's a good example. So, yeah, so it talks about like, what chapter the action is related to, a small description, what goals in the plan that carries forward, and then sometimes there's an example of, just for context. So I'm working on these for each one, and then I will get this out digitally to everybody within the next couple of days here.
So what happens next? You have to finish the plan and then the commissioners have to approve it and then you have to pinpoint where you want to start?
As far as actions, yeah, we would probably go in and probably just have some sort of authorization for a couple specific actions that are, yeah, if they're specific, I mean, some of them like the open space tax is a good example. You know, we would want some specific parameters on what are we doing with that and where are we carrying that action out.
Yeah, I think it's also important to assign priorities to those action plan items. Like maybe that's something the board will assist with.
Yeah, because we don't have them prioritized now.
Right.
And part of that is intentional because some of them work together. But if we can get like a grouping.
But I think this group needs, their own set of marching orders, like, okay, we have the plan, what do you want to see first? And then outline all those next action items.
Yeah.
You're not thinking of like telling people they're gonna have an open space tax, like that's the first thing you're gonna tell people, are you? Because they're gonna just get pissed off and not want to cooperate at all.
It depends on the timing. That's why I had the timeline associated.
Yeah, because that was a big question at those meetings. Why don't we have preserved land? And then the topic was coming up, well, that takes money and the farmer has to agree and this and that.
Yeah.
So I'm being a bit harsh, but they need some reminders of what they were asking for.
Yeah.
That's my take on it.
Yeah, but if we can get grants and things like that.
Right, but this is going, and I understand what you're saying about grants, but to make it viable for some of these people for land preservation, they're up against what developers will pay them. You see, and I'm not sure that's gonna happen when we only have two farm land, although Jandel's always that's always an unknown, but,
One of the aspects of the open space tax that you can also look at, it's not just for acquisition, it's also for maintenance. They amended the law like, 4 years ago, 5 years ago, where you can actually use it to maintain your existing spaces as well and improve them. So like say you, need to upgrade a park or whatever, rehabilitate a park, that open space, you can use up to 25% of that amount, either in the balance or in the amount that you anticipate to receive in revenues each year. So there's other benefits to it, and that's where it would be key on the educational.
yeah. Because isn't that what we're talking about? Isn't that what they're doing there in Northampton County? I mean, Northampton County has a huge
Yes.
number. And
Northampton County, at the county level, has a dedicated tax for open space, in which they do actually provide grant funding to townships to help rehabilitate and acquire properties and so forth. So yeah, Lehigh County has a farmland preservation program, but it's not as well funded as the Northampton County one, which they literally set aside, I think, $1 million.
The farmland is, but if it's not farmland and it doesn't qualify for that program, you can't really utilize it.
I would say it's gonna be a tough sell, so I don't know.
Right. And they match their money with the state funding available.
But knowing that all those facts that go behind the open land tax does really help.
Oh, that does help.
Yeah.
That does.
We should be educating the public on what it costs to maintain open space, right? And so, none of this is free.
Yeah.
And so if you want this, there's a cost associated with it, and they're gonna propose a tax to fund that, right? So I think
think we
We're
can tell the
talking,
story.
we're all people in this room who do fairly well. People do not want to be taxed more, and they're gonna be anti against an open space tax. I'm just saying, as a common person, honestly, it's hard. People are really having a hard time. They don't want to be taxed more, and especially for an open space, they're gonna say, I don't want it. You're not gonna get buy-in, you're gonna have a tough time. If there's alternatives, I will do everything to help with alternatives with it, It's just, I just think that's such a very bad way to introduce such a great plan that you spent so much time and money on already. And then to say, oh, we're gonna put an open tax on it, it's not gonna, I don't wanna be taxed again. I mean, I'm trying to, you know what I mean? People are just trying to survive. And if you want buy-in, you'll get maybe people helping to do different things versus, I don't know. God bless you.
Well,
Just get scared with that.
yeah, well, you
Just
hear a
think
lot
you're
of,
gonna defeat yourselves.
we hear a lot of comparison. I mean, what Northampton County does is truly amazing. And those people tout that over there. But they also know that there's a tax, but they're getting what they want.
And they might have lower school taxes, or they might have different
They
things.
do, they just actually went up.
Well, it depends. The really rural communities have very low school taxes because they literally, I would say, 60% of the municipality in some cases is rural, right? So, but yeah, that's not South Whitehall Township. So yeah, you have to be conscious. You have to tailor the program to your own municipality.
Is there any way to tax all the developers that are coming in here, all the big wigs that are, basically ruining the environment?
You have to have a uniform tax. So you have to be careful with that. I appreciate that. I'm just answering. So basically, yeah, you have to tax people uniformly. You have to remember businesses already pay a business privilege tax here as well. So they're already taxed on that aspect. They're taxed on the real estate level. So yeah, we just have to be careful with only applying tax to certain segments of the community.
And what we're talking about here is, we're talking about a referendum, correct?
Mhm.
I mean, we're not saying,
Yeah.
oh, this is absolutely gonna be a tax. We're
think-
leaving it up to
I
the.
think your comments, I'm not speaking for you. I think you're saying you don't want to adopt the plan and then the next action we take is roll out the referendum. Is that what you're saying?
Or.
Right, roll out that you want to
Yeah.
do it.
Well, it's up to them.
And if I could.
And if there's a way of no.
Yeah. Be methodical in how we roll it out. Like, yeah, I agree with you. I don't think we should adopt a plan and say,
Well, and
we
everything.
have this plan, now you have a new tax coming, which, again, to your point,
They're gonna
has to
vote for
go through a referendum, but there has to be a procedural, logical step to our process here, and that's why I think the prioritization is so important.
Remember with the plan like this is, we kind of mentioned before, this is a 10-year plan. This is high level. Everything in here is high level. That's where we're trying to add some specifics to it to give us some guidance as the next steps. But as with a lot of the actions in here, it's almost like they lead to more specific actions down the line. So when we talk about the one being an open space preservation program, we heard that across the board from the community. We need to do more to protect our open space. So the action is, let's be a little bit more intentional in what the township can do to protect open space. And that is actually acquiring some of the rights of, property rights or the properties themselves. In order to do that, especially in a township like this, we absolutely have to look into an alternative funding mechanism, because the township is very proactive in what we do now with state grants and federal grants and private grants and even with our own capital budget to try to manage properties as best that we can. We have some property that is donated to the township, or we have property that's dedicated, but we just don't have the financial resources, especially in a community like this, to purchase outright. The farm across the street is a great example. And even if it's not, beating someone out, even if there's no interest, we just can't afford it to allow, unless it's donated somehow. And there's limitations with the grants that are available. Most of them require your own match commitment. Oftentimes half of it, you'll get half of the money to purchase a property from a grant. And we fully intend on taking advantage of these grants and trying to do that. But when it comes to that other half of the money, it's coming from somewhere. It's either coming from, pulling it from something else where then, there's other services that we can't provide as a township, or there's other projects that we can't pursue. And that's where the idea of a dedicated funding source, which is allowed through the Pennsylvania Constitution, it's been very successful in neighboring communities. And again, it's not, we go to September, adopt the plan, boom, taxes there. It's more the investigation of what does that tax look like? How much does that look like? Passing an ordinance through a large public process that specifies what entails that, and including all the outreach that we're saying of kind of the justifications. You want this, here's what it costs.
You don't want the big warehouse in here.
Exactly, yeah,
You
in
have to be
order.
able to space.
What are the pros and cons of identifying it specifically as an open space tax versus just a line item in budget for open space preservation? And, maybe there's a tax increase associated with that, but it's not necessarily labeled an open space tax.
Or we can call it whatever. I mean, I've been going around.
I think the reason why it's earned income as opposed to the real estate tax is because of the aspect that people are on fixed income. I mean, I think that's part of it. That you're only taxing one segment of the population as opposed to, one that impacts all owners, whether regardless of, their income source. I do think that was part of the reasoning. There's other factors. I just,
And there's a lot of ways that when we develop not only that message of why is this important, but also what does this cost? There's a lot of ways to synthesize what the cost is. I've worked in other communities where they have gone through this same sort of thing, and they get down to it's going to be the cost of an extra large pizza a month to you as a homeowner. That's how it penciled out in that particular community. Again, because it's the earned income. So looking at that, and that's true, we need to strike the balance of what is our need assessment to where we need to go in order to preserve the amount of open space that we feel is, thank you, ideal for this community based on the feedback that we've heard.
And
take that and achievable, and that's the opportunity.
Yeah.
And then what's the impact?
Noting like how many people utilize the open space outside of the township.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure you've had that.
No, that's very good. We're at the commissioners meeting.
Some people from other townships use all the parks for sure.
Other states.
But ultimately, the tax is going to be a board commission decision because they're the ones who kind of have to stand up and defend it, right? So, I mean, it's going to be their decision.
It doesn't go anywhere unless an ordinance is passed specifically by the Board of Commissioners that allows it to go on to, again, it goes to the ballot and it could fall flat,
And the other thing too, is like, there's so many ways that you could start like really looking at, okay, do we really need this? Then can it save in this area? Do we really need this? And can it save? I mean, that's what I do, you shuffle things around and instead of saying, oh, I have to get a better paying job, or where am I wasting money? And I don't need this. This is not a necessity. It's nice, it's not a necessity.
Yeah,
I've
heard like, the cost of Starbucks broken down into like, if you're not spending your weekly Starbucks, and then that goes to, and then like a nice big picture of, do you want your weekly Starbucks or do you want that like nice farm field behind you? And you want that to protect you forever.
Office and I threw something at you. I know, I don't know enough to really I'm just throwing things out there, so I hope I don't get anyone upset, but like I gave him an argument, says, you really need that? Because that money can go towards open spaces. And he came back, well, why he really needs that, and so just like really think about, do you really, really need it? Is it?
Yeah, I'll be honest, the cost of land is
Outrageous.
It's not outrageous. It's just so significant that it's not like
Nickel and dime, you save $1 here.
exactly. I don't see,
especially in this area.
Exactly, yeah. And that's the challenge. Otherwise, I mean, the township has been very proactive in a lot of this stuff, if not, intentionally as part of a plan like this, but, we would certainly pursue it if we had the ability to fit the resources that we have.
Yeah, and we scrutinize the budget each year. I mean, trying to make sure we provide the same level of services that our residents have grown accustomed to, a fully staffed, extremely well-funded police department, public works, roads. I mean, this is a township with a high level of services.
Yeah.
Compared to some even other communities in the area. And we try to maintain that while still, keeping the taxes
Do you
pretty
think we're a
low.
little too spoiled?
I'm not gonna comment on that, but,
You fell right in.
Salt on the road yet, it's like.
yeah, I mean, we're, like I said, we have a high level of services here, and it's our job to try to maintain those services in the most cost-effective manner. And I think we've done a good job of that.
And what month is that typically held, Tom?
So we actually are starting it now, and then you won't see a work product till like September, October.
Into the Board of Commissioner meetings where they go through that whole thing.
That's in October.
That's in October, so you can listen in and.
Yes. Yeah, please.
But the last one that lasted 2 hours, didn't that one last like super long?
Yeah, usually budget meetings last like 2, 3, 4 hours. Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys was
I
drinking.
think the township residents have been pretty clear about their desire to preserve open space and their concerns about township being overly developed. And so I think we can use that as a way to say, okay, well, this is what you've told us you want, and here's what it's going to cost to do it. And I think there's
Right, I liked your idea of not calling it an open space tax.
But again, it's the commissioners who are going to have to say, I'm going to stand up and support this. And if the township says no, I mean, then they face the consequences of that.
Yeah,
Right?
I think it's important to know, like, I think staff's job and the role of this advisory council is to give them the facts, right? To do all that background work and, to give them the information in which to make a decision. Not just in a vacuum, really giving them, completing all those steps and outlines so that the commissioners can feel like they are doing something. But ultimately, it is a referendum. So yeah, the voters would, if they turn it down, then you can't put it back on the ballot for another, I believe it's 5 years.
No, really?
Yes.
So what do you do if you can't get it through?
Then you have a much reduced plan.
Yeah.
Yeah. The law says if the ballot fails, you can't put it back up again.
But even beyond that, for the commissioners themselves, though, right? I mean, that's something they have to face consequences of that in their own campaigns. If they're supporting a tax that the township says no, we don't want, I mean, there could be consequences for them when it comes time for them to run for reelection.
Yeah, and that's a step above.
I think people, for the most part, want people who are concerned about the environment. I mean, a lot of people are voting with people who have, good values. They still have good values. So hopefully.
You're gonna make simple changes to this, right? Or.
Yes, I'm definitely gonna make changes.
If no one else wants it.
Yeah, there's 2 here, and I have a couple more. I have a couple more that I just haven't addressed.
Because when we're talking to people, this is what I will take with me, and.
Oh, no, everyone will get a final copy.
We will?
Yeah.
We'll get
Oh, absolutely.
There's probably some typos in there.
There's definitely typos.
Yeah.
If you look at the action plan, it just says the same sentence over and over and over. It's like 5 pages of that. So I wanted you guys to have some physical copies here in case you wanted to take notes on it. We are in the board comment period now. So over the next 2 weeks, again, I will send out the digital version to everybody, but in the next 2 weeks, if you have comments or things that you want to talk to me about, reach out to me directly, because I want to make the changes right then and there, and then at the, what board meeting?
21st, right?
Yeah. No,
The next board meeting.
oh, here we go. Yes, the 21st, I would like to have at least a sense of, is everybody kind of nodding heads, thumbs up with the plan? This is one thing, by the 21st. And then I think the board did say they wanted to.
21st is Wednesday.
Yes, the Board of Commissioners.
Oh, okay.
Yes, the Board of Commissioners meeting. And then I think the board did say that they would then want a 2-week public comment period,
Right.
which I would have a form set up online. So this right now is just the EAC Planning Commission, Board of Commissioners shade tree review period to make sure, you guys are doing the first look at it, and then we'll adjust from there before we send out for the public comment. And then we want to take it to the other public meeting. So when we meet next in August, hopefully we won't really even have much of a discussion on the plan. It'll be more of the vote for a recommendation to have the board adopt the plan.
The only
And then
thing,
we'll vote for all.
no, I was just gonna say, that timeline just doesn't really allow if there's like substantive comments from
Correct,
the EAC. So we
yeah.
might have to adjust it.
Yeah,
If there's comments received from the PC Planning Commission, I'm sorry, Lehigh Valley Planning Commission or the EAC,
yeah.
right? That required a change. I'm not saying that that's gonna be the case, but
Yeah. This is best case scenario.
Yes, best case.
So this, we will all get the
The digital copy.
final,
Good. No, I don't want a hard
Of
copy.
the final one after it's adopted?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm gonna have one, we're looking at, we might have a little bit of money in the budget to do some nice prints, and I'm gonna try to see if we can get one for all of the board members.
I'm gonna keep.
Sure, yeah.
I'm gonna fight it.
I have more. Yeah, that's first rough draft. That's first rough draft,
We're gonna
and
fight over
then by this board meeting on the 26th, you'll have the final draft.
And that would be the digital one.
And I'm gonna send out the rough draft tomorrow with digitally, yes. Unless someone wants a print.
Now, so to speak, just to kind of look at it
Look at
digitally,
everything.
come up with anything that we think is amiss or we want to add, we can just email it to you.
Yes.
And we won't bring it up at the next meeting. Next meeting, we'll just adopt. We already have spoken our, and we can move on to more of them for us.
Yeah, next meeting, I'd like to of officers, and we'll take the pieces of this board specific, and I'll maybe even do a full draft of that. I wanted to try to get some of that for tonight, but I was looking at, I wanted to kind of go through the action plan of the pull specific actions out and apply it to areas that we talked about. And you guys for next one.
Can I make one suggestion though? If any of us email feedback to Chris, we include the whole group.
I love that.
I would prefer that, yeah, and I was gonna say, if there's anything substantial, definitely, bring it up to the attention of the EAC and we'll discuss it, but we're not to kind of wrap this thing up too, so it's, go through it, but it's not, unless there's something that raises a red flag.
I really don't think that there's anything. I'm more ready for the next step. I think it's great. I'm ready to move on.
And I think that's what we'll get from most of the boards, and I think I'm honestly looking for hey, this is, can we reword this or provide some clarity, or I see this action, but I don't really know what this, where this goes, and then that gives us something a little bit more complete when we do put it out to the public, and then we can kind of just adjust from there.
Good job.
If anybody make a motion, then
Wrap it up.
Yes, yeah, anything courtesy of the floor. We wanted to just mention briefly while Ally is here, and Ally introduced herself before. Ally's been on staff now a couple months, I think, doing great through the summer. And then when we talk about naturalization, we've actually had an opportunity already that Ally's helped us with for the Vistas Park. Do you want to talk a little bit just about like what we're doing with the Vistas Park, and maybe what you kind of what we talked about on Friday with our event?
You mentioned rain garden. There is a rain garden in Vistas Park, low wet area that I put rain garden plants in, plants that can take water in, clean it up, keep it. And then throughout the park, like the whole edge of the park right now is just grass. There's no trees and no shade. And so we put a whole bunch of trees. We put trees on one side that are safe to plant by a sewer drain, and then trees along the other side that are just like Mexican. And then there's and native. And there's also like a little like garden area and a nature play area.
Wow, where is the park?
It's
What's it called? Vista Park.
Vistas, yeah.
Yeah, if you're familiar with Chapman and Blue Barn Road, the Vistas development is up here. There's a series of twins. Yeah, it's over in Paris next to us. Yeah, so this is the 7 acre.
Are you doing any other park? Are you open for suggestions, Ally? Okay,
I mean, it's not up to me right now.
Okay.
But absolutely.
Okay, because I live right by, what's that?
Tell them I'm going, and I can make it.
Well, that's what we're gonna do. If it's, yeah, I mean, we're gonna sit down and do that for all of the open spaces. Like, we're gonna get through the, I'll have a map out. I'll have a big map and we're gonna be, yes. We're killing it.
Blue Barn, you don't, so we can kill her. Plant.
All those townhomes on Blue Barn Road.
These were, yeah.
Right across the street, so zoom in there, right in there.
The pool, let's go over.
Yeah.
So it's so dark, we'll just break it.
You can come over now. Yeah,
Yes, we do.
that's right in there.
Nice.
Which one? Well, you live in a nice, that's beautiful.
Wow, it's pretty, looks like there's a lot of trees. I do have a lot, it's funny, when I'm sitting in my yard and we look around, every tree that we see is in our yard, because across the street, there's no trees. Or they planted them, but they're like, there's.
Yeah. To Ally, that's one thing you did with Vistas Park was to try to buffer, like the aesthetic trees are buffering the homes along there. So
It's so exciting, because that was just wide open there.
Yeah, they have no trees whatsoever in that townhouse area.
They might not,
They may not be planted yet.
You're full-time, you're not seasonal?
Full-time.
Full-time.
Very nice. So much.
Thank you, yes, that's so nice.
yeah, this is the Vistas, so you can see it just a whole lot of grass. Yeah. Yeah, we had a movie on Friday night at this park, and we were able to share some of the concept plans with people who came out of the park, and we had excellent feedback. I feel like very positive. People are excited to see.
Keep you back in the day.
Did you have a good turnout for that?
I think so. Yeah, there was a lot of people.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah, there were people for the movie, and then it was nice. We also had people just come out to kind of. Then we had a food truck and some other vendors and people who are interested in the update to the park, because there's a lot of people that live right there that are excited to see this park upgrade. Great.
Yep, there you go.
Good job.
Anything else courtesy of the floor? Otherwise, motion from anyone to adjourn? All right.
You need a second?
Yes. Okay, meeting adjourned 8:11 PM.